COVID-19 is sweeping through the country's jails and prisons. They have proven to be a breeding ground for contagion, with tight quarters that don't allow room for social distancing.
You know, law enforcement in the United States, thanks largely to the war on drugs, routinely targets people of color, often living in ghetto areas, for stops and searches, you know, typically in a futile effort to find drugs.
Although the 13th Amendment has been considered a significant civil rights victory for blacks in America, a closer look shows that there are more blacks incarcerated and working for free against their will in America than during slavery.
Prisons have become almost quasi-religious insofar as people imagine that they are necessary at the scale and scope to which they've developed over the last 30 years.
In response to the growing crisis of COVID-19, much has been revealed about the systemic rot within our democracy, and specifically our criminal justice system, that allows us to incarcerate a disproportionate amount of African American men and women. In response to this, radical feminists like Angela Davis took up the terminology of abolition that had been first used by W.E.B. Du Bois to describe the emancipation of slaves.
Prison abolition is a way of imagining a world in which interpersonal harm, economic need, social and health vulnerability are things of the past.
It's not that, Black people weren't inherently criminal. They weren't stealing because they were Black. They were stealing because they were formerly enslaved and they didn't have anything. And so to think that the white people not feel safe, yeah, they didn't feel safe because they were getting their stuff stolen. They were being knocked up beside their head, left and right. Like, they had every reason to not feel safe, because when you create a structure and invest in a violent structure that keeps people unequal, people are going to take your stuff.
Real complex. The reliance on prisons to solve social problems is a trend all over the world. And why the juggernaut of privatization has to be linked to our understanding of the problem of the prison. The neoliberal assumption that anything can be a source of profit. Human beings can be marketed.
While there is a wide variety of opinions both within and outside of civil rights groups as to the best path forward, there are many who believe that abolition is the only way to truly free those who have been disenfranchised by the criminal justice system and given the recourse to truly change their material conditions.
And try to think about what the underlying social order is that has produced the possibility that police can blow away Black people with no consequence. And so one thing that I understand, people active in Black Lives Matters understand, is that the capacity to kill is actually a precondition for the capacity to incarcerate. And so we have to address both of those problems. And in order to do that, we have to think about the entire social order. What kind of economy do we want to live?
But the measure of whether reforms will actually be helpful in the long run, I think, resides in the question of whether or not it makes life better and more habitable for those who happen to be in prison. Not whether it will strengthen the institution of the prison, not whether it will make more permanent the prison and its practices of the practices that fill it of over incarceration.
That in places where inequality is the deepest, the use of prison and punishment is the greatest. Nowhere, however, gets even close to the United States.
That resources that can go to salaries and well-being are going into prison.
Like what we choose to criminalize. So all harm, it shouldn't be considered criminal, and everything that's criminalized isn't harmful.
There is no single path forward to achieve prison abolition today, or even tomorrow. The work necessary to destroy our culture's systemic relationship with violence and the many institutions within that work to perpetuate this violence on a domestic and global scale. But there are a few organizations that are doing the work to try and abolish the racist prison system within our country and the world.